just like everything.
Otherwise,
The garden waits for spring.
enjoy the special time.
Just like everything, we don't look back, we don't know where we've been. Just then looking down, feet planted in the ground. Just then standing there, I found a secret I could never share. Breaking free, I saw my future staring back at me. And I said, sorry, Mama, sorry, Father. But gardens only grow when you believe in them.
A lot of people forget that the most beautiful part of a tree isn't always the foliage. In fact, at this time of the year, looking at this Freeman maple, the bark is just amazing. I mean, these exfoliating ridges are just spectacular. And the tree is huge. Probably isn't more than 50 or 60 years old, maybe a little bit older. Freemans are both natural and man-made hybrids between red maple and silver maple. Autumn blaze is a typical variety that people would grow in a landscape. But because we're here near Salt Creek in eastern DuPage County, the ranges of silver maple and red maple overlap. So you actually have a fair amount of natural hybridization that's occurred over the years. And seedlings from these maples, and there are several in the neighborhood, you can see them around. Those are actually black locusts. That's a Norway maple, which isn't native, and a cottonwood. But seedlings between the red and silver maples exhibit a range of different leaf shapes and colors. A high percentage of the seedlings from this tree, because it's probably of mixed genetics from several generations way back, produce red or red tinged foliage, even though the tree itself doesn't really have appreciable fall color at all. For the very same reason that this maple grows so well, these white pines are enormous. When the wind is blowing as it is, you can actually hear the wind sing between the needles sometimes. I'm not sure if we can hear that today or not. If I shut up, though, it'll be a little bit easier to hear. reason these trees are so magnificent is not only do we have Salt Creek nearby, but we have a number of underground tributaries that run along the distance north and south. Here to the west of Salt Creek that provide oxygenated water to the roots, something white pines really appreciate that they don't get in typical landscapes where the soil has been disturbed. That's why it's kind of nice to live in old construction instead of new, where they strip the topsoil away and then sell it back to you an inch at a time. Here's a group of moonglow sweet bay magnolia. This is Magnolia virginiana. It exists in many land races in the eastern and southeastern part of the U.S. But what's unusual about this year, even though the wind is howling right now, is these plants have kept their foliage all winter. It's now almost the 1st of February, and it won't be long before they start unrolling their bud sheaths at the top of the stem. Here you can see where the new foliage emerges. I've got 3 plants. They're each slightly different in size. The largest one probably about 15 feet tall. But the nice thing about this magnolia is it blooms on and off all summer, starting in early summer. In a favorable year, it'll even make a beautiful orange-red seed pod. It's actually the seeds that drape from the pods themselves, that provide the color. The pods are more cone-like. Amazing. And again, the weather changes at this time of the year in the Chicago area. Didn't quite expect to have the thunderstorms we had overnight. Again, the 3rd week of January, and then the howling winds and temperature drop today. But until the weather settles in probably April or even May, just about anything is possible. But again, nice to see moonglow, Magnolia virginiana, not native to this area, but native to southern Illinois and eastward and southward, keeping its leaves all winter long. And isn't this beautiful? The silver color just really pops. I almost think I want to put more evergreens back here just to pop that silver. Again, here a multi-stem, but it can be trained to a single stem as well. This rhododendron is a maximum X roseum seedling. I actually got it along with a bunch of other small seedling trees and shrubs from Musser Forests. It's a great site, great catalog if you want to start small and experience the pleasure of growing on for yourself. Probably wasn't much bigger than my hand when I first got it. You can see these buds are ready to pop. We had a little overnight dusting of rain and snow. Try to slow this guy down a little bit just so you can see how fat this is. I always say it won't be long, but obviously with the weather we had last night, rain and thunderstorms we've had in the past few weeks, and the kind of yo-yo of warmth and just a little bit of cold we've had all winter, I can't honestly say the bottom won't fall out. We'll have a blizzard on Easter, but hoping not. Here's to an early spring. probably not the most attractive plant of the rhododendrons that can be grown in this area. In fact, this species cross isn't usually seen here. Occasionally you see it on the other side of the lake in Michigan, where it can grow tall and rather columnar because of one of the parents. It's a little gawky, but it blooms, and it lives over any winter we can throw at it. So it's a keeper. Maybe I can add a few more. This azalea is Rhododendron puccinense Karen, sometimes called Karens. I'm not even sure what is the correct spelling of the name. It goes by both in the industry, and as far as gardeners are concerned, it's the same plant. It's semi-evergreen. It's brilliant pinkish purple. Blooms ahead of the PJM rhododendron, which it superficially resembles, but they're actually in different genetic subgroups of the genus rhododendron. But you can see against this light snow, which is melting and kind of beating into droplets on the foliage, it's just stunning. Not every year will it keep all this foliage. These were just planted in the fall. It's a small number 5 that I put in to give a little bit more backbone to this area of the garden. It's a companion for the rhododendron, the larger type growing to its side. But over time these plants will touch. They form mushroom cap shaped pillows of color in the spring. An extremely hardy rhododendron for the upper Midwest. These Stewartsonian azaleas, all azaleas are technically rhododendrons, are at slightly different stages of maturity. They were planted a couple of years apart. These are the older ones. But you can see even in the wintertime they keep quite a bit of foliage. And it's hard to see exactly. They have almost kind of a ruby brown color. It's very pretty against the snow, although it's kind of a dark day. There is a little bit of action going on in the tips. They look like they want to do something, just not quite yet. And with this unsettled weather we've been having, I'm sure it benefits them to kind of hang tight and not move along until the weather is truly settled. I think this Arapaho thornless blackberry really appreciates the fact that even tonight we may go to 10 or 12 degrees instead of the typical minus 10 or minus 15 or 20. It was bred in Arkansas. It actually did produce berries this year, even after last year's minus 10 or minus 15. But when it comes down to it, blackberries are kind of pushing the envelope here in northern Illinois. It's a large plant. I think I may do a little bit more to prune it back in the spring and sort out the canes to the youngest and most vigorous. It probably feels like home, save for the fact that we're having a snow flurry today. Cold temperatures. Right here are some very large exbury azaleas. Just look at the fresh green buds on this Mount St. Helens deciduous azalea. Looks like it's just ready for spring. This is a sizable plant. Not all varieties are equally tall, but a lot of people don't realize that in our area these plants can attain quite a size if they're sited properly and their basic needs are attended to. This one has a brilliant flamingo pink color with kind of an orange blaze. Can't miss it when it's in bloom, it's shocking. This variety, Gibraltar, is probably more common. It's the expiry deciduous azalea that most people know best. But it's quite a bit shorter. Stays around 4 feet tall, and it's about 5 to 6 feet wide now. But as you can see, it's equally eager to open its flower buds in the spring. Now this little one here used to be the big guy, Klondike. Gold and yellow with orange highlights. It was easily as tall as Mount St. Helens is now. But unfortunately, a few years back, we had periodical cicadas, a 17-year brood that hatched. And due to the ovipositional activity of the females, that is, they lay eggs using an ovipositor that rasps open the bark so that they can make channels to deposit the eggs. This plant was severely damaged, and for some reason, they picked this one over the rest. What's grown back has been a slow train coming. It's been several years. But as you can see, it's equally eager to open its buds here in the spring. It's almost the 1st of February. It won't be long. These plants usually bloom in May, but they start showing activity much earlier than that. Each year I do a little bit more cutting to get rid of the branches that have the worst ovipositional damage. It's probably hard to see here, but there's some furrows that have calloused over that actually show where the damage occurred on what's left. Most of it's already been cut off. Let's see if we can get a little bit better look. This eastern bayberry is a male, and I thought I'd get seedling bayberries from Musser Forests also. Try to give it some companionship, so to speak. And the one right next to it, that's smaller, is also a male. So I think we'll have to shop a little harder for a female, otherwise we're never going to get any berries. But it certainly smells nice, looks good over the winter. You can see individual plants vary in how much foliage they keep in the winter. This little guy lost all of its leaves. This one keeps about half. No conversation about winter buds would be complete without at least taking a look at witch hazel. This is a hybrid witch hazel, which means it's a combination of 2 different species. The name variety is Diane. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous deep orange mahogany when it opens, usually in February or early March at the latest. Wind is still howling. But this plant doesn't seem to care. It just keeps on cooking all through the winter. These buds have gradually become fatter. And usually about the same time the Freeman maples open up. Again, mid to late February, early March. This is also one of the first woody plants to open its flowers. And if you're not sure when the Freeman maples open, just look up. The lesson is, look up. Or look down. When I first bought this plant, I didn't realize it was grafted. And now you can see the small, twiggy, upright growth branch coming up from the base of the plant is actually understock of a common or vernal witch hazel. The new bark looks different than the new bark on Diane, and every year or two I need to police these pieces of understock that keep regrowing. When you're dealing with a named variety grafted plant that's on an understock of a different variety or a seedling, you need to remember to be vigilant, because the understock can be more dominant and can overgrow the named variety. In this case, you can see how whippy this growth got even after just 1 year. It also has a different fall color. The leaf is altogether different too. Instead of the brilliant orange-red fall color of Diane, it's a dull yellow-green or yellowish. So just remember, be vigilant. If you have plants that are grafted and you don't know it at first, like I didn't know this when I bought it, you will find out later, and it's important to be vigilant about policing the understock. The rosemary plants are still alive underneath their inverted pots. Typically they're killed off at about 10 or 15 degrees. We've only been below that 3 times this season, and only recently in the past few weeks did I decide to cover them. So if we're lucky, I'll have rosemary in the spring. If not, it was an effort worth a try. The Nero di Toscano kale is not dead yet. In fact, it looks pretty good. Kind of smell it. It has an aroma after being frozen and thawed and frozen and thawed. But once the weather breaks for spring, it won't be difficult to clean the plants up and get at least several more cuttings out of them before they bolt to seed. Here's some Sedum Autumn Joy and some Miscanthus sabrinus, which is zebra grass. Sometimes I regret leaving it up over the winter because it can get pounded down by the snow, especially if it's wet and heavy. But we haven't had that this year, so it looks great against what little snow we have in the blue sky. Likewise, the Sedum Autumn Joy, these will all need to be cut back in the spring, along with a few other perennials that I left up. Now this Magnolia Jane has nice fat buds ready to pop. All we need is the right number of heating degree days in spring, and these things will blow open. Right now they're fat and velvety, and they feel like a kitten. Behind this plant is a winter gem boxwood. This was just a little thing a couple of years ago. I bought it from a chain store. I will say that if this twig doesn't get pruned soon, it's going to poke somebody's eye out, so I got to get on it shortly. Dormant pruning is one of those winter gardening chores that get you out in the garden and you can see stuff like this. But again, you just have to look. Here's a Globosa blue spruce not far from my foundation. The 10 years I've had this thing, I've never sheared it or clipped it, or I don't think I've even pruned a twig. It's kind of nice to have a shrub that does exactly what you want it to in the space that you've given it. And look at the color. Isn't it great against the snow? Again, here's the winter gem boxwood. I used to have a few more. Actually, I had 3 more, but they are prone to volutella blight in our area. For some reason, this one that was growing by itself didn't get it, so I just let it grow. There's no need to always feel compelled to formally shear a boxwood. I do give it a little clipping once in a while. It would probably be 9 feet tall instead of 7 if I left it alone. But again, a great, rich, deep green. Looks great whether it's covered with snow or not. And it also has flower buds, which you can't see. Oh, yes you can. There's a few of them, which will open in the spring, early spring. before the daffodils even bloom. And this is one of the first plants that attracts pollinating bees and other insects. Tiny little bees. The fragrance is just wonderful. These Carefree Wonder roses are about 6.5 feet tall at the most. There are 3 of them. They've been here for probably 15 years, but for the first 5 years they didn't do a whole lot. Then I used Mike. It's a commercial brand of mycorrhizal bacteria supplement in a tub that you work into the soil. And not only did it improve their growth right away, the following year they just got huge. But they've been big ever since, and also the amount of winter starch that they have is amazing. Again, I rarely give them more than just a little bit of a haircut. And like any permanent shrub, you take out the oldest branches, kind of like this twiggy business down at the bottom, that's going to come out. But if it's green and healthy, it's going to stay. Nice plant. Like the Carefree Wonder roses out front, this group of Live and Easy shrub roses has kept their foliage all winter. They bloom so late that I never even cut off the spent flowers. They were still blooming at Thanksgiving because we had a mild, long fall with very little frost. Now, one of the things I notice about this variety, it's classed as a floribunda, but it grows like a shrub. There's even a bud that didn't open. I don't think it'll open in the spring, but it's a nice thought. Here's the original plant of the group. I didn't cut it back much last spring except for a slight haircut, because even with our minus 10 to 15, it made it through the winter pretty well with lots of fresh buds high up onto the plant. The lesson here is, at least in this part of the country, don't cut your roses back until spring. You want to see, first of all, if the plant has enough starch to make it through the winter, and then what actually makes it. There are a lot of people who subscribe to the old school of hacking the crap out of these things in the fall and then stuffing styrofoam cones over them. Well, first of all, this garden is a cone-free zone. You're not going to see a single styrofoam cone here. And secondly, if varieties need that kind of attention, they don't belong in my garden anyway. And thirdly, this plant has absolutely clean foliage, free of various fungal diseases like powdery mildew and black spot. So it's a keeper. And by the way, the color is a brilliant orange to orange salmon, suffused yellow. It's just a step above the color of any other shrub rose out there. And again, it's officially classed as a floribunda. These little guys were added to the group later to just fill out the space, and they won't be long behind Dad here in terms of height and bulk. It's a special time, a magical time, that time before spring awakens. Think of it like you'd think of that crack of light just before dawn, except it's a different kind of dawn. Don't wait for the calendar to say it's spring. If you want to see it, just look up, look down, look all around you. But whatever you do, just look. It's your world. Treat it well. It's your connection. Make the most of it.
Just like everything, the garden waits for spring. Just like everything, we don't look back, we don't know where we've been. Just then looking down, feet Just then, standing there, I found a secret I could never share. That day, breaking free, I saw my future staring back at me.